and welcome again to the Articulate Outburst podcast. That obviously is the introduction to anybody out there, the song that is the overarching song of the album. I'm here today to talk about UNSAFE SPACES, which was the title album. There is no actual title song on it called UNSAFE SPACES, because UNSAFE SPACES is the overarching theme of the album. Came to me quite a while ago with universities banning just about, well, to be quite honest, I think the list is endless. And it became quite clear whether there was a determined attempt to stifle opposition debate. If there's somebody you don't agree with, the best thing you can do is put them on a stage and debate them. The idea that is now not happening in certain universities, and certain universities are by default forbidding said conversations. It's a very, very slippery slope when you can no longer argue against your competitors, in the fact that you then end up in an echo chamber and you only ever hear views that reconfirm or confirm your own. It's unhealthy. Hence the album UNSAFE SPACES was the only way to go with Articulate Outburst. And like all debut albums, this is a pretty much a kick your head in style music and a kick in your head in style politics, although the lyrics and the subject matter are very, very nuanced. It could have fallen into a load of traps. I think it stayed clear of many, and this podcast is here to really go through the album. Obviously it's coming out in January. We have the odd promo copy available. We've sold absolutely loads of these, and this is just word of mouth. Nothing is available yet online. It will be coming. It's coming. Get the general idea as soon as it is. They'll be up raw, so we are keeping our powder dry, for want of a better expression. So, UNSAFE SPACES. I propose in future streams to do each song individually in a kind of a classic album style, so that you can really get the idea of how the songs were built up over time, what the changes were, what the re-edits were, what the fist fights were all about. But ultimately, I think what we've got here is pretty much the core of what we actually set off to do. So UNSAFE SPACES, I won't lie, I picked the idea from Pink Floyd's The Wall, where Roger Waters' The Wall was made up of bits and pieces of his shattered life, if you like. A bit of a whinge for me, but each to their own. And I took that as a tapestry for 2018. I was listening to quite a lot of YouTubers who were giving the alternate media view. I since then don't even watch mainstream media anymore. They're so far away from the sensible centre that there's virtually no point watching them at all. So obviously the YouTubers at that time were multiple. You don't need me to tell you they are. They're out there if you want to find them. I don't want to be either a proponent of theirs or hanging on their coattails, but we know who they are. So the album is 10 songs, and each song is an unsafe space. And this is really to work at the universities and other places where debate is being curtailed. The idea on the album is that each song has an empty auditorium behind it, so that a theatre, a comedy club, a lecture theatre, a debating place should all be on there with an empty microphone, with a microphone and an empty auditorium, because that really is an unsafe space when people stop getting together in the public square to air their differences and discuss their views. Just because somebody says it's an unpalatable subject, you really have to decide for yourself rather than have somebody decide that for you. I mean, the first thing somebody says, if there's anything controversial, like a picture or anything, can I have a look at it? It's natural, and that's now being denied to just an entire generation. But either way, my contribution is thus: I'm not an intellect, I'm not an author, I'm not an intelligent kind of guy on an academic level. I don't read much, I listen. I've got a photographic memory for many things, but not for everything. And I thought that my contribution to the public square would be an album, and that album is UNSAFE SPACES. So let's taking one record at a time. Anybody out there is the overreaching anthem, if you like. I've got to say, one of my favourite songs, although when you play these things that often, you do get kind of sick of them after a while. But ultimately, and what that's pretty much is, it opens up, the opening lines, I just think, set the tone of the whole album. For the rights of man and the good of the individual. And what that really is, the opening lines that say exactly where we're going to go, is male-centric has kind of been lost. We're all persons, we're all communities, we're all this, we're not men. Men have kind of not been erased from society, but they're certainly being rubbed out in many aspects of many things. So I thought it was key to open the album with For the Rights of Man. That's not for the rights of mankind, that's for the rights of man. And second of all, the individual was a key line to get in there. For the good of the individual. We're being painted into our inherent groups so that it's what would my peers say, how would my peers react? I'm not part of a group, I'm an individual, I am me. I'm open to change, I'm open to conversations, and I'm open to changing my mind, but it will be me that makes that decision. And I just thought, what a great opening line to an album, especially one for UNSAFE Spaces. And that really sets the tone of the rest of it, to be fair. I won't go through each lyric of each song, because we'll be here all day, and I'll try to keep these streams less than 10 minutes if I can, so that nobody's nodding off halfway through. So ultimately, anybody out there, is the first song on the album that says this is how it's going to be. The order may change because it's not out in January, but this is what we've provisionally put it on. The second song is Gammon. Again, link in the description. They're all on SoundCloud for now until we incorporate it into a full record, and then I guess it'll be whichever channel we can get it through. I suspect that there will be barricades and borders and all sorts of other things, and defences we'll have to overcome. But Gammon is the second song on the album, and this is pretty much where the liberal elites, or how should I say, the extremist liberals on the left, have a tendency to refer to the common man or the working class man as gammon, as uneducated pork in some ways, and this song really reclaims that back. For the sensible centre, yes, we may be working class, but we have our hopes, we have our ideas, we have our families and friends that we want to support and help out, and you know that our lives are just as important as other people's. So to sideline us as a kind of uneducated minority is just beyond the pale. But we've reclaimed the term, like a certain section of society reclaimed the N-word. We've reclaimed the G-word for ourselves. That says great unwashed, oi polloi. So kind of in the song, but yeah, ultimately this is, call us gammon by all means, but this gammon has a hell of a lot to say. The third one was perhaps the one with the most pitfalls available to us. It was the trans issue, the LBGTQ, the alphabet people issue. And what could easily have happened is if we'd have got this wrong, we'd have been in big, I won't say trouble, but ultimately navigating this minefield was treacherous at best. And with all the Outburst songs, we're trying to take the view of the individual as opposed to the group. So I won't share your delusion, but I'll defend you in a fight. Says absolutely everything there is to know about most people and this subject. I don't believe, but I believe that you believe it to be true, and I'm more than happy with that. If anybody comes to bully you, I will stand between them and I will protect you with all my might. And I'm not talking about protection on a keyboard warrior, I'm talking in the real world. You are in trouble, you're getting bullied. Would you rather stand behind 22 stone 6'2" Matty, or some creep on a keyboard that just takes it upon themselves to chisel away at the edges? And that's what the song is essentially about. Real courage, real protection where it's needed. Again, won't go into it, but that's the premise behind the song. Then we're on to Sticks and Stones. Now, Sticks and Stones, when I was a kid, I was getting chinned. No, I wasn't getting chinned, I was getting called on by the lads in the street when we lived in our first house. And what was happening is they'd be calling me all sorts. And at the time, I remember actually saying to my mother, I can see it like it was yesterday, I said, they're all calling me names. And she said, well, it doesn't hurt you, does it? It's not like you're going to get a punch or a kick. It's just a name, it's just calling names. And that empowered me. Ever since that day, and I could have only been 5 years old, nothing anybody has ever said about me has bothered me in any way. Words, well, the lyrics in the song are quite happy, are quite adamant, but we'll do this on a different stream. The fifth one was again another chance for a pitfall, getting something wrong. This is the Muslim grooming gang scandal in the north of England that nobody seems to want to grab by the scruff of the neck and solve. Our weakest in society are being picked on by people who should know better, who know that they're breaking the rules, who know that it's wrong on every single level, and a police force that's absolutely no desire to stamp it out whatsoever. The papers have refused to cover it in any detail. I've noticed many a sentence in here in Nows on a Friday afternoon so that they missed the news cycle, so the BBC skips it. But this is the greatest scandal of our time, and I will not stop going on about it. I've empowered the victims in the song. I've not called their perpetrators or the detractors anything at all. But the people around them that were supposed to save them did nothing. Well, Articulate Outburst will at least keep that smell right under the nose of that establishment until something is done to stamp this out across the board. I'll leave it there. The next one on the list is straight white male. Again, a little bit of the rights of man and the good of the individual from the first song. Straight white male says exactly what it's supposed to do. Originally it was going to be straight white working class male as the most, how can we put this, the most discriminated against category in society. But getting the working class bit in was very, very difficult as a lyric. So we stood with straight white male. Perhaps the one true punk song on this album is straight white male. Again, people think it's about white supremacy. Again, they'll get it wrong. But if you listen to the lyrics, the words are very, very accurate. It is what it is. Straight white males are being eradicated from society. It's certainly not getting any acting jobs, certainly not on any adverts, but again, this is just an observation of what we see. This is not making a point about it, this is not saying it should be something else, it is just merely pointing out what's going on. The next one's repeat offender. Everybody these days, and it's a generational thing, will start off with, I'm offended. I've even heard it in the pub the other night where I was really offended, as if that's supposed to mean something in and of itself. I'm offended. I'm offended by poverty. I'm offended by injustice. I'm offended doesn't seem to have a ring of truth to it. Everybody is offended, as if that's supposed to answer the question. Hence, repeat offender. Again, the song explains this in more detail. The next one, and this is another thing that annoys me, is we're all being told we're part of this community, that community, the other community. And when the police are on TV, if somebody's being disadvantaged, they'll say, we're reaching out to that community. And I get the general idea, they're telling us what, don't you worry, we've got this. And it's this constant thing where you get the general idea that some communities are treated differently to other communities, that might get a different touch from the police if they're in that community, or a different reporting from the press if they're in another community. And this disenfranchising of the British people. Communities is one of the best songs. It's about citizens of the UK, subsection, and then the inherited communities. What we're doing is we're not doing enough of being citizens of the UK. We're being divided into our inherent communities, which is mad. So Communities is a great track on the album. Next one down is Snowflake. I don't think that needs any explanation whatsoever. The song rotates around the seasons of the year and the comments are what they are. There is an entire generation of people who are hurt all the time. I don't particularly blame for this. I don't think it's right or wrong, but it's there and it needs to be talked about, sang about, and certainly discussed in the public square. The last one on the list is one for me, really, and it's not so much as a war on woke or anything, but it's the One More Camera song. And One More Camera is about how we're sleepwalking ourselves into a surveillance society. If we'd have said 30 years ago, by the way, everywhere in England will be covered on camera. Your doorbell will have one in, your car will have one in, the police will be all over the place with them, drones will have them in. If you were told 30 years ago that this was going to be the future, there'd have been uproar, there'd have been protests, there'd have been anarchy all over. But how it worked and how this has happened is one camera goes up, people raise an eyebrow. Everybody comes out and says, well, you know, it allows us to see where the traffic flow is, it allows us to see what's going on. And then the next thing, another camera goes up. You think, hang on a minute, did we not? And then before you know it, there's masts of cameras all over, in every single direction, monitoring quiet motorways in the middle of the night, busy motorways in the day. Yet crime, violent crime, are on the increase in the capital, which is the most surveillanced society in the world. And I'm thinking, so crime's not really getting solved as a result of these cameras. Again, it's one more camera. I just think if somebody was asked, have you got a camera? I needed one more camera. And I just think it's one of those things. 99.999% of the people in this country don't need to be watched. The little few that do, we're not solving that problem. So why are we on the cameras all of the time? So One More Camera is basically my kind of slant on society. But that then takes us into the second album, which we're currently writing, which is Heroes and Bad Actors. Because in this day and age, there's no such thing as villains anymore. Just piss poor attempts to be them. But again, that's another stream. Thanks for listening in on this one. I think we'll hear us play ourselves out again. Why not? That's if I can find it, of course. Yeah, so why not? I'll leave you with Articulate Outburst. Thanks for listening. It really does mean something. 17 minutes, a slight overrun. Apologies.